We certainly are so very thankful you being with us today. And as has been mentioned, we do have many visitors. And as always, we're indeed grateful for you being with us today and encourage you to come back as you have opportunity. I want to read a passage from Romans chapter 12 to begin today's lesson. And I begin in verse 9. Romans 12, I begin in verse 9. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another, with brotherly love, and honor preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, rejoicing in the Lord. Serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. Distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you, bless, and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you. Live peaceably with all men. There is no doubt that love is a command. It is a command from the great God of heaven. But for love to be real, it must not be pretended. As we begin that reading, he said, let love be without dissimulation. Dissimulation means hypocrisy. And so Paul, through inspiration, commands that our love, Paul writing to the Roman saints, Paul writing still to Christians today in that regard, Paul, through inspiration, commands that the love we as Christians exhibit toward one another be non-hypocritical. And in that regard, he goes on further and tells us and gives us some attributes of non-hypocritical love. He gives us the attributes of true love. I want us this morning to begin to look at the attributes of true love. And we will continue where we leave off in tonight's lesson through the Lord's will. The very first thing Paul tells us through the inspiration of Almighty God concerning true love is that true love abhors evil. True love abhors evil and cleaves to the good. Abhor means to hate. It means to hate with every fiber of one's being. My friend, the love that we exhibit as God's people, that kind of love should shrink away in horror from anything that is evil. And the statement that we read from the Apostle Paul, it places us under a divine responsibility. This is not something that we can choose to ignore and still in that process retain God's approval. In Amos 5 at verse 15, Amos penned these words. He said, hate the evil and love the good, and establish judgment in the gate. It may be the Lord God of hosts be gracious unto the remnant of Joseph. In Psalm 119 and 104, through thy precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way. My friend, we as God's people, we are just the same type of mindset today. Because we get the understanding that we do through the Word of God, it ought to cause us to hate every false way. It ought to cause us to hate everything that is not right with God. A Christian should hate the effects of evil and what evil is doing to people in our community. We ought to hate that. And we are to hate what God hates. In this year, we have spent some time in a series of lessons talking about some things that God hates. You remember them? A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that are swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaks lies. And my friend, God hates a man or a woman who would dare sow discord among the brethren. My dear friends, we are under obligation. If we truly love God and we truly love one another, we must hate the same things God hates. But not only are we to abhor evil, he says we also are to cleave to the good. To cleave means to cling to stick to. He is calling upon us to not only abhor everything that's evil, but to glue ourselves to the things that are good. Every time I read that verse, I remember back from my younger days that commercial that was on seemingly all the time. And it was a commercial selling Crazy Glue. And to exemplify just how strong Crazy Glue was, there was a man who had glued his hard hat to an iron beam, and there he was held holding on to his hard hat hour after hour, supposedly, because the glue was just that strong. The bond had been established that was unbreakable. It seemed as that commercial went off, and on into eternity that man still be hanging on that iron beam. Well, he calls upon us to glue ourselves to the good. Now, dear friend, in order to do that, we must be able to identify both the good and the bad. You know, there are many people today who proclaim very loudly that there is no absolute standard of good and evil. There is no standard, an absolute standard anyway, of right and wrong. My friend Paul states otherwise. Paul says you abhor the evil and you cleave to the good. Many think today that in order to show love, a person must preach toleration. And so they say, we don't preach on anything from this pulpit but love. That's all we preach here is love. Well, I'll tell you something, friend. Mutual indulgence is not love. As a matter of fact, when I begin to love the way God loves, it means I will not put up with evil. That's what it means. He's not talking about this mutual indulgence. Mutual indulgence is nowhere near what God thinks about love. As a matter of fact, you remember a few weeks ago when we examined the first chapter of Hebrews, do you remember verse 9 talking about Jesus Christ as, thou hast loved righteousness. Well, he does not end there. Thou hast loved righteousness and what? Hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. That was why Christ was anointed above his fellows, not only because he loved righteousness, but because he hated iniquity. My friend, if you want to love like God loves, if you want to love God like God wants you to love him, and you want to love the brethren as God calls upon us to love the brethren, not only must you abhor evil, but you've got to cleave to the good. It's the first attribute of true love. The second attribute is this. It practices family love. We read that verse together. Be kindly affection one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. Brotherly love is the tender love that must characterize each child of God toward every other child of God. In Hebrews 13 at verse 1, the writer of Hebrews says simply, let brotherly love continue. In 1 Peter 1:22, seeing ye have purified your souls in obeying the truth of the Spirit, unto unfeigned love of the brethren. See that you love one another with a pure heart fervently. My friend, this here again, this is not a prerogative that you and I have. This is a command of God. If we are ever going to have God's approval, this is required of us. You remember that the badge of discipleship, the very badge that identifies us as being a disciple of Christ, is the genuine love we manifest toward other Christians. And so a Christian maintains no attitude of animosity toward anyone. A Christian develops a genuine concern for all people, and especially toward other people in the Lord's church. You know the attitude that's commonly manifested by worldly people, and you understand it's one of self-interest. Friend, I believe it's one of the greatest changes that must be made when one becomes a Christian. It's that shift in our attitude toward other people. You know, I think it's great when Jesus simply says, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Now you go on and finish that verse, take up his cross and follow me. But the very first thing he says is deny yourself. You know, it appears to me that God puts in each individual a respect for self-preservation. You know, as a parent, you can tell your child over and over, now don't touch the stove eye, it's hot. Mason's 18 years old, just last year touched the hot stove eye. Why do that? I was going to see if it's hot or not. Well, it is. Self-preservation. Don't touch the stove eye. It's hot. It'll burn you. But you know what? When that child finally touches the stove eye, guess what kicks in? And from that point forward, that child will do his very best not to what? Not to touch that hot stove eye. It's self-preservation. We don't want to do things that would harm us. Sane people, we don't have an idea of going out, getting a claw hammer, and hitting our thumbs and hitting our fingers. We want to protect ourselves. You know why? Because whether you think so or not, Scott thinks he's pretty important. And I don't want to harm myself. And Jesus says, if you're going to follow me, you better not think so highly of Scott. You better have the ability to put other people and other ideas ahead of yourself. And that's hard to do. And my friend, if you go on further and you question me, I will tell you that that's why many people turn their back on God. The first sign of trouble, the first sign of tribulation, a lot of people, as Brother Case used to say, they tuck their tail and run. Why? Because they thought their self was so high that they shouldn't have to endure those kind of trials and temptations and tribulations. And the whole time Jesus said, deny yourself. See, that's a tremendous change. And you go on further, and sometimes this involves depriving ourselves of some things and some situations which we would like to have, all in an effort to advance the welfare of our brother. But isn't that what Paul called upon us to do? Didn't Paul say, that we that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of who? Of the weak. Not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor, he says. Christ didn't please himself. Let no man seek his own, he went on for the 1 Corinthians. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Chapter 10, verse 24, 1 Corinthians. In talking about the attributes of genuine love, in the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, verse 5, he said, it does not behave unseemly. But he also said, it seeks not her own. And that's true love. But also notice he says, preferring one another. You know, we have to be, if we're going to demonstrate this genuine love toward other Christians, we're going to have to be ready to recognize, but not only to recognize, but to go on further and rejoice in our brother's talents. We must strive to excel. But my friend, when we're striving to be the very best that we can be, I'm not doing that, I must not be doing that in some type of effort to obtain the most honor. When I try to be the best preacher I can be, Ralph the best song leader he can be, the one praying to lead the best prayer he can lead, it's not in an effort to obtain honor and the most honor. It's all in an effort to glorify God and edify and exhort our brethren. And so it says, prefer one another. Lift the brother up. Rejoice. Recognize your brother's talents. But the third attribute is this. He says, not slothful in business. You know, our children probably know already at a very young age that a sloth is the slowest moving animal in the entire animal kingdom. Friend, we are not to be like that animal. We are to be fervent in our work. And dear friend, the business he's referring to here, you better understand, it is not worldly business. The business is spiritual business. He's not saying when you go to Walmart, don't be slothful. Now you know as Christians, as a Christian people, with the right type of Christian attitude, if I'm going to do a work in a worldly activity, in a secular job, I'm called upon to do the best I can do. And I'm called upon to do it with the right kind of attitude. But friend, that's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about spiritual business. He's giving us directions on how to discharge all the duties we have as Christians. And the business of the church is not, the business of the church must not be conducted in some type of non-business sloppy way. You can go to the doctor tomorrow and they can put that thermometer hopefully in your mouth. They pull it back out and say, you got a perfect temperature, and you'll leave there knowing you have what? 98.6. Friend, 98.6 don't cut it in the work of the church. 98.6 is not a perfect temperature in regard to spiritual work. We must give it everything we have. And friend, when we do spiritual work, we give it our entire being because we are serving the Lord. The Lord is our boss. In Acts 18, verse 25, talking about Paul, he says, this man was instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spake and talked diligently the things of the Lord. Fervent in the Lord. Paul talking about Aquila. Friend, there's no room in Christ's army for half-hearted soldiers. You know, a person who's in the army back in the old days, if you dressed in this half with this army's color and this half that army colors, it didn't ensure your safety. All that ensured was you was going to be shot from both directions. No man can serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one, love the other, or else you'll hold the one, despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Matthew 6:24. He that is not with me is against me. He that gathereth not with me scatters abroad. Matthew 12:30. My friend, you can't be half-hearted. And so he calls upon us. If you're going to say you love God, if you're going to say you love Christ and you love your brethren, my friend, it cannot be half-hearted. It can't be slothful. I don't know what you do for the work of God. A lot of things take place that I have no idea about. A lot of things people in this congregation do to promote the cause of Christ, and nobody has any idea except that person, maybe one or two more. But I'm going to tell you something. Whatever it is you do, give it all you got. If anything deserves to be done with the very best of your ability, my friend, it's the work of God. If you're called upon to teach a Bible class, I don't care if it's the nursery or the old folks, you give it everything you got. If they call upon you to put a bulletin board up in the Lord's church, give it all you got. Ralph, when you lead singing, do what you've been doing, give it all you got. Alan, when you lead singing, give it all you got. Scott, when you preach, give it all you got. Somebody asks me sometimes, especially after I've been sick, they say, you seem to preach awful hard today. Shouldn't you have took it easy? Shouldn't you have took it easy? No. When I stand up here, I ought to give you everything I got. And if I don't do that, I need to retire. Give it all you got. Fourth thing, let's go on. It does things that are contrary to human nature. Rejoicing in hope, patient tribulation, continuing in instant in prayer. But you know, friend, a faithful Christian has nothing to fear in this life. God has promised that He is going to provide for all of my daily needs. God has promised that He will protect the Christian from things too big for he or her to handle. God has promised to guide the Christian through His Word. God has promised to hear his prayers. Rejoice in that hope. And you take hope away, and there's nothing left. My friend, if you ask me what I thought was the most awful thing about the eternal damnation of hell, I wouldn't say the flames. I wouldn't even say the darkness. I would say because it's a place of no hope. That's a terrible place. A place where all hope is gone. So Jesus says, don't fear those people that can kill the body. They may can kill the body, but they can't kill the soul. Now, if you want to fear somebody, then fear the one who is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. Rejoice in the hope you have. But not only rejoicing in hope, he says the Christian is patient in tribulation. To be patient is to be steadfast, to endure, to remain faithful to Christ despite any and all persecutions. You know, many people lose faith because of that, because they have to go through some type of persecution. But no matter what the trial is, I'm supposed to be steadfast. And then, Brother James says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. James, you mean that when I have to go through some type of outward trial, I ought to count that a great joy? Yes. Yeah. To remain faithful requires a high degree of dedication. Friend, there's no one who ever has went on into eternity prepared to meet God in judgment that did not become that way and remain that way because of a great dedication exhibited. And dedication requires a strong faith. You see, it's something that we must learn how to do. It takes effort. But yet true love does not quit. But now if I'm going to have a strong faith, the only way I can have that strong faith is through the study of God's Word. So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Romans 10:17. But he also says, if I'm a true Christian with true love, I'm one who just continues instant in prayer. You know, we still communicate with God today. You see, God communicates with me through this book here. And every time I open it, God talks to me. Every time I think about a passage, God talks to me. And then I get the great privilege of talking to God. See, God talks to me through the Word, and I talk to God through my mediator and intercessors. Now, what he told us here is equivalent to 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 17, where he simply said, pray without ceasing. James would tell us, James 5, confess your faults one another and pray one for another, that you may be healed. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. I've always thought of it like this, friends. If the Son of God, the one who left the riches of heaven, if the Son of God needed the strength provided by prayer, then there's no doubt that I need that same type of strength provided by prayer. And you do as well. True love does things contrary to human nature. The last point this morning is this: true love also gives, distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. In Bible times, New Testament times, faithful saints often lost their jobs. They often lost their houses, their businesses, their possessions. You see, oftentimes they had to flee from their persecutors. And when they had to flee from persecution, they had to leave behind all their worldly goods. And so one of the things which raised the church above everybody else, one of the things which made the church be so appealing and look so beautiful, was the love that they had for each other. The care they had for each other. The fact that these people, they would take care of each other. Even in our day, there's still a need for the fortunate in this world's goods to share and to help build up people who are less fortunate. Matter of fact, I'm not going there this morning, but you ought to read 1 Timothy 5 again, because Timothy through the writing of Paul, is giving some direction on how to do that to people who are in need in that particular day. In our day, we still need to be looking to help people who are in need. But he also says, given to hospitality. You see, that's the kind of person that I need to become. A person whose manner of life is simply helping other people. In 1 John 3, verse 14, he says, we know that we have passed from death unto life because we love the brethren. He that loveth his brother abideth, and he that loveth not his brother abideth in death. He continues, but whoso hath this world's good, and seeth his brother in need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? 1 John 3, verse 17. James said it like this: if a brother or sister be naked, destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things were needful to them, the body, what does that profit? And then he makes that correlation, even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. James 2, 15 through 17. Friend, James says, it does not do anybody any good for you to simply say, be warmed and filled. You see, you show that you love by what you do. In Hebrews 13, 1 and 2, let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. And we don't entertain angels today, but we need to be hospitable people. This verse does not even mean that I may one day entertain an angel in my home. Friend, the motive for all of what I do is brotherly love. As we close this lesson, I want you to think about the people in the Amish community. A barn burns down in the Amish community. Do you know what they do? Do they call the American Red Cross? Do they call any type of organization that offers aid to people who are distressed and in need? No. They just simply help themselves. They all gather together, and before you know it, they have what you call a barn raising. Friend, in that very same fashion, the church needs to help its own people. Again, read 1 Timothy chapter 5. But friend, Matthew 5, verse 46 and 47, the Lord says, but if we salute our brothers only, what do we more than others? If we only salute our brethren, if we only help our brethren, what do we more than others? If we can help our brethren, we can help anybody else. The church can. Many years ago, I preached a sermon, and I asked the question, why is the Dead Sea dead? I hope you remember why the Dead Sea is dead. What beautiful water flows through the Jordan River, the Sea of Gennesaret up there, the Sea of Galilee, and it all keeps flowing, and it gets to the Dead Sea, and it receives all that water. But guess what, friend? There is no outlet in the Dead Sea. And so everything the Dead Sea receives, it what? It keeps. And friend, that is why the Dead Sea is dead. And we got to be givers. We got to be givers. I encourage you to come back And we'll finish this lesson tonight to look at the attributes of true Christian love. Somebody says, don't just tell me you love me, show me you love me. And Jesus, the great God of heaven, don't just tell me, show me. And these are the attributes. This is what you do to show God and show everybody else, I love the way God wants me to love. And if you're outside of Christ, would you come home today? Have enough faith to motivate you to obedience. Repent of your sins, confess faith in Jesus. We'll help you to be immersed in the water, have your sins washed away in the precious blood of Jesus. And if you realize on the journey of life, you become hard-hearted, your attitude's not been right, whatever it is, it displeases God, why not make the proper correction today? If it's public, we'll take care of it in a public manner. We'll let it pray with you for you. If it's private, take care of it privately. My friend, the invitation is yours. Can we assist you so that please come and we all stand and sing.